it is official, right? It has now been broken. The news is out there that today's AEW All In Texas has broken the record for the longest pay-per-view of all time. And as a content creator, I felt every second of it. Before I even get into the show, right? I'm just going to go on this little rant before I start talking about the actual graphs, right? No human being should sit there and consume the amount of professional wrestling that I did today. You had 7 hours basically of All In. Then I had 2 hours of Saturday night's main event. Throw in a little bit of NXT there. And that is what we got today. It was a wrestling marathon for the ages. And to be completely honest with you, I'm hoping that this is going to be a one-time thing, but knowing the way that these two companies like to throw on events and counter program with each other, it will not be a one-time thing. Guys, this is your AEW All In post show from the Fast Count. I am Kevin Zwicker. Guys, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. And before we even get into All In, right? I want to sit here and kind of briefly talk about what just went down on WWE Saturday night's main event, because it was pretty significant what went down twofold. One, we got the ending of the career of Bill Goldberg. Like it or not, Bill Goldberg is probably one of the bigger names in professional wrestling in the last at least 30 years. You know, whether you enjoy the man's matches or not, one thing that cannot be denied is the fact that he was one of the bigger draws, at least in the late 90s. His return match against Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series 2017 is personally in my favorite top 5 matches of all time. So salute Bill Goldberg. He went out like a man. He went out against Gunther in the main event. It went a lot longer than I believe most people would have expected it to go. So salute for Bill to coming out of that match in one piece and enjoy retirement, my man. Next, we're going to talk about what went down earlier, right? And what went down earlier, if it's an injury that is going to be for the long term, really fucks Monday Night Raw in the worst way possible and throws a monkey wrench in things that were obviously in motion heading into SummerSlam. We saw LA Knight go one-on-one against Seth Rollins, and we saw Seth Rollins take the L in what comes to look as if he suffered a pretty significant knee injury. Now, Seth Rollins is no stranger to knee injuries, so there's always going to be that heightened concern that this is going to be a significant injury, right? On a personal level, it sucks for him. Nobody ever wants to see somebody get hurt. But on multiple different other levels, it really, really puts WWE in a pickle, because not only is he Mr. Money in the Bank, so the question now goes to what is going to happen with the briefcase. And for what was going down on Monday Night Raw, it looked as if plans were in motion for him to go one-on-one with Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. Now, this is the second PLE in a row that you saw a significant player go down due to injury. Evolution with Liv Morgan, now with Seth Rollins. Hopefully this isn't a long-term injury where he's going to be missing a significant amount of time. But Monday Night Raw is really just going to have to triple down on Braun Breaker now that they don't have Seth Rollins, right? Because things on the Raw side are getting really thin when it comes to the top players. There's no Roman Reigns. John Cena has one foot out the door. They're going to have to probably have Cody Rhodes pull double duty. CM Punk and Gunther are going to be the ones who are primarily going to have to hold things down for them on that front, right? And then we're going to go into the confirmation that we're going to have Jelly Roll, yes, Jelly Roll, and Randy Orton go against Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul at SummerSlam. We saw Drew McIntyre go one-on-one with Randy Orton, and we saw Jelly Roll pick up and eat a Claymore, setting this plan into motion. Now, I know that from WWE's inception, from the very first WrestleMania, there was celebrity involvement. You had Ali, Liberace, Mr. T in the main event, Cyndi Lauper. So for anybody to complain and say, why are they putting these non-wrestlers in this match? You just haven't been watching WWE for that long. But my only problem is this. I think there's a proper way to use celebrities and there's an improper way to use celebrities. I think that the way that they had Bad Bunny go up against Damian Priest in Puerto Rico, not only was it a good match, but the fact that you had Damian Priest, who at the time was kind of in a position where he needed that type of rub in that big high profile match that he wouldn't get regardless of without Bad Bunny. I thought that that was a benefit for him, right? In this match, you have Logan Paul, already a made man, Drew McIntyre, already a made man, and Randy Orton, obviously a legend. So for me, this doesn't shine a light on any of these individuals who don't already have a light on them. So for me, it's just a bunch of bullshit, and it doesn't really help anybody, right? So that's kind of the thoughts on that. But let's now go into AEW All In. Now, this was the show that coming into this weekend, I was the most excited for. Obviously, there's big time matchups that took place throughout the card. The main event I thought was great. Okada versus Kenny Omega. Personally, for me, this is strange because this never happened to me outside of maybe Ric Flair's last match. I saw myself getting emotional before the match even started. Call me a mark, call me a nerd, call me whatever, but Okada versus Kenny Omega, the trilogy initially started in a period for me where I was kind of on the fence of continuing my fanhood of professional wrestling. And I think any lifelong professional wrestling fan goes through those moments where you're at a point where you're thinking to yourself, is this going to be the moment where I grew out of it? I'm sure that a lot of you guys have had friends who were fans at one point and grew out of it, or people who don't get it. And that series of matches came together in the period where I thought maybe it was my time to leave the professional wrestling game. And they basically salvaged my love for professional wrestling and continued me to this path that you guys see me on today, that's talking about it in the camera. So I have a soft spot for Okada versus Kenny Omega. And for me going into it, no matter what was going to take place in that ring, I was going to come out satisfied. And I was exactly satisfied once the bell rang and once things started going on. But let's start from the top of the card. We had the Ops going up against the Death Riders, but instead of the normal rotation of Death Riders, we had their paid mercenary, Gabe Kidd. Gabe Kidd is one half of my favorite match that took place this entire year, and that was all the way back in January when he went one-on-one against Kenny Omega at Wrestle Dynasty in the Tokyo Dome. Phenomenal match if you guys haven't seen it, right? And throughout this match, you were kind of teased of that confrontation between Samoa Joe and Gabe Kidd. Gabe Kidd throughout this whole match, when he was sitting on the apron, looked as if he was a dog with rabies, the way he was foaming from the mouth. You saw Wheeler Yuta take a lot of abuse throughout this whole match, going up against Will Hobbs, Samoa Joe, Shibata. Wheeler was getting the beats. He was getting worked this entire match, right? And we saw a lot of different moments where we finally got that moment that was, you know, kind of teased throughout that whole match where we saw Gabe Kidd and Samoa Joe finally be able to lock horns. We saw Shibata and Gabe Kidd lock horns. As you guys know, they have a relationship dating back all the way to where Shibata was in Japan. So this was a lot of different things taking place at one moment. But at the end of the day, we saw Joe put Wheeler Yuta out there and tap him out. We saw Samoa Joe hit the Muscle Buster, which is a move that is littered in controversy. As we all know, Samoa Joe hit that move on the Tyson Kidd and happened to end his career with it. So it's a move that certain people aren't a fan of, other people are a fan of. For me, I look at it more like that was a freak incident, and you know, this shit happens when it comes to professional wrestling. Now, after the match, you saw the Death Riders put on the beats on the Ops. We saw Samoa Joe had the chair wrapped around his neck. Now, at that moment, what I thought we were going to get was we were going to get a return of Hook. And we were going to get teased that Hook was going to make the save and align with the Ops. But in reality, he was going to step on the chair and hurt Samoa Joe's neck. Because you guys remember several weeks back when we had the Anarchy in the Arena match, it looked as if we were getting a tease of Hook and Samoa Joe having some friction. And we never really got a payoff from that. I've heard that Hook talked about in an interview that he had a concussion, so maybe he's still not medically cleared. But we saw Samoa Joe have the chair wrapped around his neck. We saw the Op step on it, and Samoa Joe was stretchered out. Next, we get the men's gauntlet match. The winner goes on to have a guaranteed world title shot in the future. Heading into this match, it revolved around two men, right? Mark Briscoe and MJF. And on Dynamite, we saw Mark Briscoe and MJF get very personal, where we saw MJF invoke the name of Jay Briscoe, obviously the former tag team partner and brother of Mark Briscoe. So you knew things were going to get very personal with these two, right? We see the match start off with these two guys. And you see MJF trying to go for quick pin after quick pin. He's not able to roll up Mark and get the 1-2-3 count. Things didn't work out from the way that MJF planned it. And we eventually saw Mark Briscoe get his hands on MJF. But before then, we saw the third man enter this match. It was none other than our Bald King, Ricochet. And at that moment, we saw a alliance between Ricochet and MJF. Slightly for a moment, because we all know heels always like to align with heels. What's going on, Pops? You missed the show that broke the record for the longest pay-per-view in history. It was held before by WrestleMania 35. So 7 hours of professional wrestling you missed. Sounds crazy, right? 7 hours. My eyes are burning. But you see this alignment between Ricochet and MJF, and it was short-lived because we saw Ricochet at one point get the thumbs to the eyes by MJF. Just used him like he's used other people in the past to get where he wants. The fourth person comes in, and it's Bandito, coming off of his big-time match against Takeshita the night before at Final Battle, where he was able to retain his championship. And as we all know, we see Ricochet get fed to the wolves by MJF. MJF goes to the sidelines and kind of chills out after what we see there. And then we see the fifth man come in, and it's Takeshita, the opponent of Bandito last night. Yes, it was a lot. Imagine this, going from 7 hours of All In, then immediately going into 2 hours of Saturday night's main event. 9 hours of wrestling. That was a lot. But I do it all for the love of the game, right? Next, the sixth man comes in, and it's Mystico. And because we're in Texas, obviously a large Mexican population, Mystico is treated as if he is a hero. He has his ring announcement. The whole crowd sings his song. Mystico is the most over man in this match for the most part, strictly based off of his song. It was a magical moment. We see MVP, who's on commentary the whole time, telling Max to sit there and go after him, go after him. Don't get stuck in the moment. But he was stuck in the moment, right? The next person who comes in is Josh Alexander. This is probably the most people he's ever wrestled in front of in his whole career, due to the fact that he spent a good amount of time in TNA. I don't think TNA has ever done a show that has had 10,000 people in it. Never been to WWE either, so this has to have been the most attended show that Josh Alexander has ever wrestled for in his career. Guys, before I go on, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know, right? Next, we get Anthony Bowens come in, and my friend and colleague in this game, Robin Lundberg, immediately alerted me that Anthony Bowens happened to actually be his intern when he worked in the radio. Crazy, right? You know people that know other people. He worked and had the pride of professional wrestling under his wing. Pretty cool, right? Next, we get not Brody King, Roderick Strong in there. And Roderick Strong, we're going to talk about a little bit later, because what happened with Adam Cole really freaking sucks. You feel for the guy, right? We're going to get into it next, right? Then we get Brody King, who obviously, as soon as Brody King stepped foot into this match, we got cannonball after cannonball. You had MJF sit there trying to reason with him, say, hey, hold on a second. Nope, didn't want to hear any of that. Ate himself a cannonball. The next person to get into this match was the returning Juice Robinson. He came back clean shaved. He looked as if he was entering a Bo Dallas impersonator contest. It was good to see Juice, right? With Juice and the whole Bang Bang gang, right? It feels as if when we get Juice back, then Jay White gets hurt. When we see Jay White back, then we get Juice back. It's like we never get the full ensemble of the guys back together at one point, right? But once we got that in, right, We saw the return of the Guns because we had the Gates of Agony who have been trying to align themselves with Ricochet as much as they possibly can, interfere in this match, help Ricochet out, and then we saw the Guns return, Austin and Colton, to try to even the odds. Good to see the Bang Bang Gang back together. Jay, we miss you. Next, we see Kota Ibushi enter the ring, one half of the Golden Lovers. Kota has really been on this, momentum ever since he's come back. This is a guy who struggled with so many injuries throughout the last couple of years that you probably thought that at some point we were never going to get the Kota of old, right? And this isn't quite the Kota of old, but it's a lot better than what we saw when he was attempting to just not rehab these injuries and not have the surgeries. He was very much a prideful guy. So we're at a point where this may not be peak Kota, but it's close enough to where he can still put on very good quality matches. Next person we come in is Beast Mortos. Beast Mortos has had a good couple of weeks, right? Coming out publicly that he is in a relationship with Mercedes Moné, my GOAT. She broke my heart. Being able to main event the Arena Mexico show, being able to be involved in the main event of Dynamite the following week, and now here in All In, there's a lot of perks that come with being aligned with the CEO, right? Next person who comes in is Max Caster, the best wrestler alive. Then we are done with all of the entries. The way that we saw this match finish up, we saw Roderick Strong eat a J driver from Mark Briscoe, him obviously paying tribute to his brother, doing his finisher to attempt to win. We see that dastardly bastard MJF toss Mark Briscoe out of the way, cover Roderick Strong for the pin, and is now the winner of the men's gauntlet match. Has a guaranteed championship opportunity in his back pocket. Further along the story that he's been building with Mark Briscoe, setting up a future match in the upcoming weeks, right? Next, we get into this fatal four-way for the TNT Championship. And you're asking me, why is this a fatal four-way for the TNT Championship? And it's not originally Kyle Fletcher versus Adam Cole, like we were promised and advertised we were going to get. Adam Cole had an injury from his match that he had on Thursday on Collision. And we see Adam Cole's music hit. And this kind of gets me in my feels because it sucks. Pursuing your dream is so hard, right? And then when you get your dream and it's taken away from you, not from your own volition, but it's just due to something that's out of your control, it just hurts, right? You see Adam Cole come out and he starts giving this speech and he tells people that, I am not in this match because of my injury that occurred on Thursday. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's probably going to be a very long time until you guys see me. And then he goes on to speak about how I don't want to use the word retirement. And as soon as that word came out of his mouth, you saw the waterworks coming down from the guy's face. You could tell that this is something very serious. He goes on to speak about how, ever since he was a little boy, he's dreamed about being a professional wrestler, how this is something that he's always wanted to do, and how, he's going to fight to try to make it back, but it's going to be a long road ahead of him. And then he goes on to thank the fans. He goes on to thank AEW. He goes on to put over the show and talk about how this is going to be the best pay-per-view of all time. Ringside, you see his stablemates. You see Kyle O'Reilly and you see Roderick Strong. And at the end, they do their signature pose. But it's going to be a long road for Adam Cole, unfortunately. And this is a guy who just gets a really raw deal, if you think about it. You remember, the biggest storyline that he's been involved with in his career, that friendship angle with MJF. He sits there and he just hops off on a freak accident. Just happens to land on a wrongly strange position and he just shatters his freaking ankle, right? And now he's put in a position where it was probably concussion. You guys can look back on it, but the way that he landed, he took a powerbomb from Kyle Fletcher, and his head kind of whiplashed on the ring apron. And obviously, when it comes to head injuries, it's very serious. So we don't know if we're ever going to see Adam Cole again. And if that was the last of Adam Cole, that we're ever going to see. At least the guy can tip his hat and say that he was in the main event of the biggest wrestling show of all time, right? Attendance-wise. No pops, Cole can't win. So we get into this makeshift fatal four-way match that was put together basically due to the fact that Cole can't compete. And going into this, I assumed that the plan was Kyle Fletcher was going to win the TNT Championship off of Adam Cole. So once we got this fatal four-way that involved Kyle Fletcher, I said, okay, we're just going to get the same destination, just a different route. But that's not what we saw, right? And it felt like this whole match, the next couple of matches as well, that the air was kind of sucked out of the arena due to that message from Adam Cole that we weren't going to see him again. And we saw at the end of this match, Dustin Rhodes pick up the win and win his first singles title since '99, which I don't think many people were expecting. I think due to the fact that this was a show in Texas, and Dustin has been a good soldier for AEW for so long that they wanted to reward him. He was surrounded by his nephews, the next generation of Rhodes. He was surrounded by the Von Erichs. It was a feel-good moment. Obviously, he was very emotional. You saw two Rhodes finish their stories, right? Cody and Dustin. So good for him. I'm not sure how long of a reign this is going to be. I don't think that this was the plan. I think that with the fact that Cole was, injured, I feel like they just wanted to have a good, feel-good moment out of this. And Dustin was the guy who they decided to reward for being such a good company soldier over the last couple of years, right? Guys, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. Next, we're going to get into Swerve versus the Bucks. Obviously, this was a very high-staked match. We had the EVP ship up for grabs. We had the fact that if Swerve and Will would have lost this match, they wouldn't have been able to challenge for the world title for a year. So it was high stakes involved in all of this. And the entrances for this match had to have taken at least 20 minutes. We had Will Ospreay come out in an Assassin's Creed style entrance, which is always nice. You had Swerve Strickland come out. He was serenaded by JoJo Offerman. I think the background to the show with the Fireflies was a very nice touch. As you guys know, this is the widow of the late, great Bray Wyatt. She came out singing Shaka Khan, which was Swerve Strickland's song that he came out to the ring with many years when he was working on the Indies. And throughout this whole match, let me take a step back. The Bucks came out and they had this founding fathers type of entrance where they had Justin Roberts read off a piece of paper that looked like the Declaration of Independence. You had them come out in this boat-like looking thing, and they were dressed as if they were, soldiers from the George Washington era. So this match, the whole time, right? The whole thing that was going on throughout it was the fact that the Bucks are this well-oiled machine. They are this tag team unit that has been doing it for so many years. And Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland are traditionally single stars. So you had the Bucks who already know each other front and back going up against these guys who aren't used to being tag teams. So there was a lot of miscues. There was a lot of times when the Bucks had the upper hand just due to the fact that Will and Swerve, even though they are friends, don't have that communication as a tag team. So we saw moments and times where it looked as if Swerve and Will were just out of their league. They just weren't going to be able to hang with the Bucks due to the fact that the lack of chemistry, right? But there was a lot of times throughout this match where you saw a lot of different moves being spammed and a lot of different times where you could have possibly saw the ending of this match. But for me, I kind of chalked that up to the Bucks were desperate men. There are men who have a lot of power, and there are men who, and put in positions where you are very desperate, you find strength that you normally wouldn't have. So they had opportunities to where they were going to be able to kick out. But at the end of the day, Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, they're too much for the Bucks. They picked up the win, and now this really sets an interesting path for the Bucks, right? We've had this storyline going out, throughout their last couple of returns where they have taken on, this persona of being, Matthew and Nicholas and not Nick and Matt, where they have been very power hungry. And now it's going to be interesting to see where they're going to go now that they have no power, right? Because before they were in positions where they could tell people what to do. They could, hold people's job security over their head, fine them, do whatever. And now that they don't have power, I feel like this is something that is really going to be useful for the Bucks going into the future because it makes them a lot more interesting now, right? Because now there's the unknown, and every wrestling fan, at least in my opinion, finds the unknown to be a lot more interesting to where we know things are going. So I'm glad for that because I feel like it gives Will Ospreay and Swerve a big win on a big stage, but it also sets the Bucks up to have a story to where they can really sink their teeth in. Next, we go into the women's gauntlet. Next, the Bucks need the L. Get off the Bucks, man. This is an unpopular opinion for certain people, but I do consider the Bucks to be the best tag team, at least for the last decade. I know there's some people who like the Usos, other people like the FTR, but for me personally, I consider the Bucks to be the best tag team of the last decade, and probably in the top 3 conversation to me for my personal favorite tag teams. Assuming I like what I like. We go into the women's gauntlet battle royal, right? And this was a lot more open to me than the men's one because going into the men's one, I kind of assumed that MJF was going to win. This was more of an open field. I thought the way that we got to the winner was the appropriate winner just due to the fact of the location and due to the position that she's in. But this was a lot more interesting to me. It started off with Chris Statlander and Megan Bayne, obviously the 2 biggest women in the division. Megan Bayne has been presented perfectly, in my opinion, ever since she's joined AEW. Tony Khan has a very bad track record when it comes to the big men, but when it comes to the big women, especially Megan Bayne, he has done it perfectly fine, in my opinion. They start off with Chris, strength, different back and forth, demonstrations of strength between the 2. The third woman to come in is Willow Nightingale. Obviously, Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander have this long past. Friends, then not friends. Then you see Chris trying to get herself back in Willow's good graces. She attempts to put her hand out and shake Willow's hand, but Willow thinks none of it. Boom, right to the mouth. The next person to come in is Ty Mello. Ty Mello, she has made her return to AEW after, the past 2 years, giving birth and all these different things. So it's good to see Ty Mello back in the flow of things. The 5th woman to come in is Tekla. Tekla has been very impressive since she has made her AEW debut, especially in this feud that she's had with Queen Emanata. And obviously, Queen Emanata is somebody who's very much so on the rise in AEW as well. The next person to come into this match is Julia Hart. She is flanked by Sky Blue. Never a bad thing to see Sky Blue. Next woman to come into the match is Queen Emanata. And as soon as you see Tekla is on like Donkey Kong between these 2 women, every time they get into the ring, they're very much so hard hitting. So this is something that I've always complained about, not just in AEW, but in WWE as well. I think that emphasizing these feuds with the women that don't involve the title is very pivotal in making the women's division more interesting. Now, WWE is doing that right now with Naomi and Jade Cargill. That, Jade is somebody who has that, she won the Queen of the Ring, and Naomi is the Money in the Bank winner, but there's no belt involved. And they're doing a very good job, especially the way that they set up their match tomorrow, and doing something interesting that doesn't involve the title. Next, we get Mina Shirakawa coming into the ring. Everybody loves Mina. I'm a big Mina guy as well. The next woman to come in is Athena. Athena is this hidden gem, right? I know some people who watch Ring of Honor, but there's more people who don't watch it than do. And she's been doing a lot of impressive stuff. She is the forever champion, but we haven't seen a lot of her on AEW television, right? And that's something that a lot of people have been complaining about for a long time. There's several untapped matchups that involve Athena that we haven't been able to see. A rematch with Mercedes Moné, a match with her and Toni Storm, match with her Willow, Statlander, Megan Bayne, Tekla. A lot of good matches that we could potentially see that we haven't been able to see because she has been kind of stuck in purgatory with Ring of Honor. Next person to come in is Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa, a part of one of my favorite women's matches in all time in AEW. Her against Britt Baker in that steel cage match in San Antonio. Perfect match in my opinion. Next we get Shuri coming in. She is a big star in Japan. Good to see her aboard. Then we get Alex Windsor, who is now officially All Elite. If you guys don't know, that is Mrs. Ospreay. So it's good to see that this is a family affair. We see Athena pick up the win by pinning Mira Shirakawa. She now has a guaranteed AEW championship in her back pocket, which ensures that we're going to see her a lot more on Dynamite and Collision, which I think is a good thing for everybody. She's a Texas girl. She was able to pick up the win in Texas. I'm sure she had family at the show, so it's a feel-good moment, not just for her, but for the people who have been begging to see her on AEW Championship. I love Athena as well. She is very good and very talented. Next, we get the triple threat for the Tag Team Championship. The Hurt Syndicate, Jet Speed, and the first father-son tag team that are aiming to become the first tag team champions as father and son. It's Christian Cage and Nick Wayne. Throughout this whole match, especially in the beginning, you saw the Hurt Syndicate just basically be able to throw their weight around. These are two very violent, two very large men who their theme song doesn't lie. They enjoy hurting people. And you saw that exactly go down with guys with you see Kevin Knight, you saw Speedball Mike Bailey. Those guys to me are the perfect foil for the Hurt Syndicate, because they're very small, very fast, so they're able to bump all over the place. And the Hurt Syndicate are basically able to use them as like pinballs, right? That's what we saw a lot of. And Nick Wayne as well. Christian, the crafty vet, was able to weasel his way out of the beatdown for the most part. We see the Hurt Syndicate retain, but what was more interesting that took place is what went down after the match, right? After the match, it looked as if Nick Wayne and Christian Cage were arguing about what took place. And we see Christian Cage turn his back to Nick Wayne. And Nick Wayne hits him with a kill switch. We all thought that it was going to be Christian Cage that turned on Nick Wayne. Nope. The other way around. We got a little bit of a swerve. We saw Nick Wayne set up Christian for a concerto, but we hear Metalingus and we get the return of Cope, right? And the funny thing about this, right, is Cope has now entered in the territory of Jeff Hardy and Penta, after what took place in Saudi Arabia, where they had to do their dance before they made the save, right? And we see Cope come in there. He saves Christian, and he goes for what looks like a repeat moment where Christian told Cope to go fuck himself. But instead of Cope telling Christian to go fuck himself, he told him to go find himself. And we see Christian looking confused, which is obviously going to set up to the eventual tag team reunion between the two, which I think everybody's expecting. I think everybody's expecting for us to eventually get Cope and Christian versus FTR, which looks like it's going to be happening sooner rather than later, which I'm totally fine with. Rumor has it that was going to be the plan heading into All In this year, but Christian, being the giving vet that he is, told creative that he wanted to finish up this story with Nick Wayne before going into that. That's nice, right? You hear a lot of different times in professional wrestling, these vets, being so insecure about their different spots and want to protect themselves that they don't really care for the young guys. So it's good to see Christian have his eye for the future. I want to look out for Nick Wayne before putting himself and Cope in this tag team run that we all know is going to happen. Next, we get the first of this triple main event show. I hate it when shows do that, right? Say, oh, we have a double main event or we have a triple main event. There is no double main event or triple main event. The main event is the last match of the show. There's this argument that always goes on with a lot of different people, about the night 1 and night 2 of WrestleMania. Is night 1 a true main event? For me, I've always considered WrestleMania, the night 2 match, as the main event of the show, because I kind of look at it like as one big event, but split in two. But then you can have that argument that some people pay tickets to just see night 1 and they don't see night 2. And when you go to streaming, it's 2 separate shows. It's labeled night 1 and night 2. So there's an argument both ways. But personally, for me, I've always considered night 2 to be the main event. This was the match that a lot of people, from a crossover standpoint, we're looking very forward to, because you have Toni Storm, who's obviously one of the most interesting characters in all professional wrestling, and you have Mercedes Moné, who has 6 belts. undefeated, has been booked as strong as you possibly can, not just in AEW, but all these other territories that she's been able to be in. And I think that it felt like it lived up to the hype. They need to fight each other in a cage first. Well, they had that street fight. I mean, what else? What else do they need to do? You know, they had that street fight. I thought that was an appropriate way. I mean, they beat the shit out of each other in Canada. So I mean, I don't think there's anywhere up from that. And the last time we saw Edge in a cage, he sat there and broke his ankles. So I think we're good. But Tony versus Mercedes, just the pageantry coming into this, the character work that these two were able to do, especially Tony, I thought that they were very much able to live up to the hype coming into this. This is at the point where the crowd was really able to wake up because they were in a slumber from the Cole announcement up until now. And Mercedes and Tony, they went out, they did what they had to do, they put on a show. Tony was able to pick up the win, ending the undefeated streak of Mercedes Moné. Mercedes took her first pinfall loss in forever. I think this was her first pinfall loss since leaving WWE. So this was great. I thought the way that they were able to work Luther into this was very comedic. I thought that this was a moment that Tony needed to, because Mercedes Moné is going to be good, right? She picked up her first loss, but she's still walking out this match with multiple belts. She's still walking out this match in a position to where she's going to be straight. Nobody is going to boo-hoo because Mercedes lost. Personally, as you guys can tell, this is a Moné household, but this was the right winner. And I feel like it really just kind of silences those people that throughout the last couple of weeks have really been pushing this narrative that, Mercedes has creative control, like Hulk Hogan, calling her Mercedes Hogan, and putting out this notion that she doesn't want to put anybody over, right? But for me, do you really think that she has been put in a position where somebody has asked her to lose? I don't think that anybody asked her to lose up until this point. I feel like you wanted to save this pinfall loss for the biggest stage possible. And for me, it made the most sense that it was going to be against Tony, who now this win established herself as the top women in AEW and also has this big flagship moment taking place on the biggest show of the year. So I personally don't think anybody has asked Mercedes to lose for her to refuse to lose. So that's just my 2 cents, in my opinion. Next, we get into the match that I was looking forward to the most. The match that ever since we got the inception of AEW that I've been looking forward the most. The match that reignited my love for professional wrestling. The match that I literally shed a tear before it happened. Okada versus Kenny Omega. The unification match between these two guys. The two greatest in-ring wrestlers of the past decade. Don't freaking argue with me. And they did what they had to do. They did what they were supposed to do. Now, obviously, this wasn't 10 years ago, right? This wasn't 2018, 2017. These are two guys who, especially Kenny Omega, isn't in the physical peak that he was back then, but is still one of the biggest big match wrestlers that we have to date. Okada as well. I know a lot of people, ever since Okada has joined AEW, have really been trying to, throw this notion out that he is somebody who's been coasting. And there's been times where I can't even debate with you. It looks as if the guy was coasting, but when the lights are the brightest, he comes out and delivers. That's exactly what we got. We saw moments where we saw, where we were reminded as to why these guys are who they are. Don Callis was in ringside, so obviously you knew that he was going to be interfering. Kenny brought out Kota Ibushi on his side, so that was kind of a neutralizer, but it wasn't able to sit there and overcome the guy who is Okada. And Okada was able to pick up the win with a Rainmaker due to some Don Callis, interference. We got shenanigans, which for me, fingers crossed, leads to another match between these two guys, because for me, they could wrestle 20 times in a row and I would be good with it. But we saw Okada pick up the win. He is now the unified champion. He picks up another win against Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega years ago did an interview about how, he feels as if he's accomplished so much in professional wrestling and he's able to live out his dream. And now he's in a mode where he wants to see other people live out his dream. For me, Kenny Omega is on a limited schedule right now. He's with the fact that his health is in question. We don't know how much longer we're going to have Kenny Omega. For me, I want to see a Kenny Omega who's as selfish as he possibly can be. But with comments like that, it just shows you how unselfish of a guy he is. In a business where you have guys refusing to put over people on a weekly basis, the fact that we have a guy who refuses to win these big matches is a bit of a mind fuck. It's something that I will never understand. But hey, praises to Kenny Omega. Congrats to Okada for picking up this win. Next, we're into the main event, the real main event. Jon Moxley versus Hangman Page in a Texas death match. They explained the rules prior to the match where there was no pin involved in this match. The only way you were going to be able to win this match was basically kind of last man standing rules where they had to, lay down for the 10 count, be down for the 10 count, or submit. We all knew there would be shenanigans. Yep. And this match was basically a hardcore version of the WrestleMania 40 main event where we saw Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. We saw all those different interferences. That's exactly what we got tonight, but a lot more violent version of it. Within the first 5 minutes of this match, we see Jon Moxley be stabbed in the head repeatedly with a fork. That immediately made me gag. We saw Hangman Page be his head wrapped around in barbed wire. We saw Jon Moxley attempt to shove barbed wire in his mouth. Very nasty stuff. Me personally, I'm not a guy who gets too squeamish when it comes to hardcore wrestling, because I believe that if you're going to do a Texas death match, the point of it is to be violent. But at some point, where is the level that we get to where it's like, okay, this is a little bit too violent? Do we need to see a guy have his head literally be decapitated for us to, say that's the line? We saw a lot of different moments where we saw a lot of different more violent stuff, right? We saw Marina Shafir give Jon Moxley a bucket. We have the bucket in there, and there's a lot of broken glass. We see Jon Moxley stomp on the broken glass in the ring, and we see Hangman Page at one point be dragged over the broken glass, which kind of felt good. I'm sure that was not a very pleasant feeling. We see a chair wrapped around barbed wire be introduced where we saw Hangman land on it. We saw many different moments where it's just like you want to kind of just cover up your face, right? And be like, holy shit, this is violent than a lot more, horror movies that are out here. Guys, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. Hitting the like button helps a lot more than you guys actually know. It'd be very appreciated. We're this close to like 3,000 subs. We're like, I think like 300, a little bit under 3, maybe a little bit over 300 subs for us to get to 3,000. So the big numbers are starting to come. But this match where you knew there was going to be a point where the Death Riders were going to be involved. And we got that. We looked as if Hangman was picking up some momentum, but with all these different numbers that were against him, it was becoming overwhelming. We saw Will Ospreay come out, attempt to help him, but Will Ospreay got a case of the beats for his trouble. He had the same thing that happened to Samoa Joe happen to him, where he had the chair on his neck being stomped on it. Will Ospreay was stretchered out. It looked as if there was no hope in sight for Hangman Page at all. Then we see on the video screen flash a video of Darby Allin on Mount Everest saying that he's going to come for everything that Jon Moxley has. And then we see somebody run into the corner with a Blue Panther mask, and it was none other than Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon, getting his get back on the Death Riders. If you guys remember, at Wrestle Dream, they ended Bryan Danielson's career, and they were going to do the plastic bag treatment to Hangman Page the same way they did Bryan Danielson, and he stopped that and was able to take out some of the Death Riders. Then from the ceiling, we see Darby Allin make his long-awaited return. He pulled off a move that would be similar to his dad's Sting. He's able to clear the ring out a little bit more. Marina Shafir was told by John Moxley to go get the briefcase, right? Because he wanted Hangman Page to smell the belt, something that he would never be able to get. And when she went to go reach for the briefcase, she saw that her hand was handcuffed, and we see the appearance of Prince Nana. Prince Nana. And as soon as you see Prince Nana, you know that Swerve Strickland is close to behind him, right? Then we see the Bucks come in. They give Hangman Page an EVP trigger. Hangman Page looked as if he was shit out of luck. But then we see Swerve come in with that chain that was given to him on Collision. And what he was able to do was he was able to clean house. And then it kind of seemed this tense moment where it looked as if was Hangman and Swerve on the same page. We all know that this rivalry that they've had for so long, was Hangman going to be screwed again by Swerve? Nope. Swerve throws him the chain, and he sits there and he wraps the chain around John Moxley's neck, chokes him out, similar to the way that he did at Revolution 2023. John Moxley taps. Hangman Page wins the AEW Championship. And he was able to finish his story similar to a former AEW EVP and Cody Rhodes did at WrestleMania 40. I feel like this was great because not only was it a very chaotic and fun and violent, brutal mess of a match, but we're able to now cap off Hangman Adam Page's story. We're able to end John Moxley's title reign, which was very mixed. A lot of people weren't a fan of it. Me wasn't a fan of it either. And just for shits and giggles, he's able to say that he was able to regain a singles championship before CM Punk was, right? So I'm happy for Hangman. This was the right way to end the show. We got the return of Darby Allin, which is always good. Bryan Danielson made a cameo, which we knew he was going to make eventually. Don't know if we're ever going to see him wrestle a full match, but I'm never going to sit there and complain about seeing Bryan Danielson because he's one of the greatest of all time. Yeah. Had to give the people. I'm getting close. I'm getting close to 3,000 subs. It's gonna happen. It's a when not if thing. It's a when not if thing. And this is an entertaining show. Very good. But like I said, too freaking long, man. If there's a point where, as a booker, and I don't know how possible it is, with booking venues and all these different things, but if you know you're gonna have a show that's going to be 6, 7, even 5.5 hours long. For the love of God, if you possibly can, please split the shows in 2 nights. Please. Because I never want to do this again. But I know that I'm probably going to be doing this again. So, but it is what it is. Meltzer's star rating, we're going to give this 4.5 stars. Match of the night was the main event. Had the most story involved, had the most memorable moments, and had the result that everybody wants to, that everybody's going to go and talking about it. Makes me excited for what we're going to be looking at Dynamite on Wednesday. My boy AJ should be at the show, so it'll be a good time. Exciting things happening in the elite world, right? Guys, there's a lot of things that I have to record, so I'm going to be out of here. It was a very productive day from a content standpoint, and tomorrow I'll be going live immediately after WWE Evolution, so stay tuned for that as well. Guys, I'm Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.